That's you, dog.
That's you. Welcome back, Fish Lifers.
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 We're doing that now.
I like it.
It's a thing now. What's going on, guys? Hey, drop us a comment. Let us know when you get in here on the Fish Life Podcast live stream. We've got a major tournament that has been won on the Big Swimbait. It's pretty rare. And I know there's a lot of you addicts out there that get super excited about major tournament wins on Big Swimbaits because y'all are like, if you ain't fishing Big Swimbaits, you're fishing for small fish. Like, y'all are like, you realize y'all are the crazy people in fishing, right? Like, y'all
I haven't said that. I did go down a rabbit hole for like 2 years back in the day, and all I did was throw big swim baits. That one was actually the one that I threw a lot.
Watch what happens to Chris when I hand him this swim bait, y'all. Watch. For those of you that are listening, you won't be able to hear this, but just, yeah. He's probably going to sit there and love on that thing the rest of the podcast.
You got to become one with it. I've got a couple of these, and I'm not even kidding you. I had like I had two. This is all I threw every time I went fishing. Not kidding.
You must become one with your big swim baits, folks. And Mitsubishi Toyota, whatever his name was, he became one with his big swim bait.
You need some help with that?
That sucker's got the alphabet in his first and last name. I know that. But man, a major tournament. The Bassmaster Open on Sam Rayburn Reservoir was just won today. Actually, it was the final day. Matsushita. Is that the last name?
Yeah.
I can't pronounce it. Masayuki Matsushita won the Bassmaster Open on Lake Sam Rayburn with big swim bait. We're going to tell you which one later. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about a few different things tonight. We're going to talk about that Bassmaster Open.
Yep.
We've got the biggest cash payout tournament of the year on Lake Fork coming up this weekend. See the outdoors. Of course, we're going to preview that. Hopefully, you guys can ask some questions. We'll answer questions about the fishing on Lake Fork and try to help you guys with that as well. So we'll talk a lot about Lake Fork and that tournament coming up. And then we've got something we like to call, what we call it?
Maxim, the Bass Edition.
Bass Edition of Maxim. We're going to do that tonight. We're going to talk about preferred, most desired body types.
This episode right here is going to all kind of correlate into one. It's kind of a perfect scenario that we're talking about.
Yeah.
These.
That's true.
Honestly, because this time of year was when I fell in love with one of these right here.
Pretty close to this time of year.
Pretty close. It was the
fall.
It was a little early.
It was, yeah, we're a little bit earlier than that, but it was a fall bite for sure. I know what you're talking about. So yeah, so that's it. We've got it. We got Central Open review of Big Swim Bait Talk. We got Lake Fork review of Big Tournament Talk, and then we got body type preferences. Probably gonna talk about some big guts, big guts.
Build your mail order bass.
Yeah, something along those lines. Let's see who we got joining us so far tonight. We've just got a few comments here. Hey, there's a lot more of you guys in here. I can see the number up there. It's way bigger than the comments. So when y'all get in here, do me a favor. First, hit that thumbs up. That'd be great. We sure would appreciate it. Then go ahead and drop a comment. Let us know that you're here. We would love to talk to you guys tonight. And if you have any questions along the way about anything at all, just ask them. We'll be happy to answer every one of them that we can get to. We got Terry Connolly, Gary Payne, Trey Hunt, a bunch of folks in the house. I'm seeing some thumbs up starting to get hit. Thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. So, that being said,
let's talk about
Rayburn.
Let's talk about it.
Let's talk about Rayburn. So, what Matsuyaki Matsushita, which is a tough one for us to say around here because we from East Texas.
Right.
We out here in East Texas. We maybe don't enunciate quite as good as some of them there fancy folks do.
We just tend to our biscuits and throw bait casters.
If y'all want to hear his name pronounced correctly, you need to go listen to the Cul-de-sac Kid version of this podcast.
That's right.
It ain't us. We ain't no Cul-de-sac Kids.
I got the top 10 pulled up for you.
Top 10, awesome. Let's see what we got going on. So, before we get into that swim bait deal, which is really cool, shout out to Daryl Gleason, fellow guide. He's down there on Toledo Bend. I've spoken highly of Daryl Gleason for a long time now. He is absolute hammer. He came in 5th place. Keith Combs got a 4th place. We've got Gerald Swindle with it showing up in 7th. And Albert Collins. Albert Collins, who is a Sam Rayburn just local stud, man. He just is, he's won some bass champs and stuff like that. But congrats to Albert Collins, because I don't think Albert's ever, I could be totally mistaken, but in recent history for sure, I don't know that Albert Collins has broken into a tournament that big and had a big finish like that. So that's kind of a step up for him. It seems like, man, that's awesome. I know Albert's won just gobs and gobs of money down there on Rayburn. He's a Rayburn handler.
So you look at the weights, and it took 60 pounds
over 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
So the weights were down for Rayburn. By Rayburn
Right.
stage. But guys, it's that time of year. It's turnovers,
tough.
summer to fall transition. Let's see what the rest of the weight said.
there's literally
Boy, and I mean, it was kind of a shootout. I mean, by Rayburn standards, when you got big fish in the lake like Rayburn does, 60 pounds, 14 ounces, so 61 pounds, 59.5, so you're within a pound and a half there. And then 57.11, again, about a pound and a half, 2 pounds almost. Yeah, I mean, the top five was all, well, the top four anyway was within 5 pounds of each other. Man, that's one bite on Sam Rayburn.
oh yeah.
That's absolutely one bite.
We
on Sam
talked
Rayburn.
about it before. Rayburn is as good a lake right now as any in the country.
Rayburn might be the best lake overall the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't call it Goat Lake over Fort for trophy bass because there's so much history with Fort.
No, but just tournament fishing in general.
But over the last couple of years, I think Rayburn's probably been better than Fort. If I'm being, just being honest, I think Rayburn's probably been better than Fort the last couple of years. Rayburn was turning over last week. They're going over. That's Terry Connerly lives on Rayburn, so that's great. Cody Mays is in the house, man. What's up, big dog? We appreciate you joining us. JD Atnip says he gotta love the HPH. He knows all about it. We've got a question, early question. What knot do you tie on the 6 cents topwater, and do you like the hollow swim bait in the fall? Yeah, I do. I like the hollow body swim bait. Kind of starting right now until the water gets down in the mid 60s or lower. Then I go away from the hollow body and go to other slower swimming baits. Yeah, Rayburn. Oh, what knot do I tie on the 6 cents topwater? I tie a knot called the Homer Circle knot. It points straight out. I like knots that point straight out on that topwater bait.
You need a freaking PhD to tie this thing to.
I'm
Your
the only
first
one
time.
I know that ties it.
I mean,
I'm literally the only one I know that
literally, that's one you're gonna want to practice before you jump in the boat and just tie it one day because it's a tough one if you're not used to it.
How do we retrieve the HPH? So, all right, I'm going to save that question. Who was that? Greg Perry. We're going to save that question, Greg. We're going to get to that one. I want to talk about this. So, pull up that bait. That bait was a depths, but it wasn't a glide bait or a hard. I don't think it was a hard bite. It was a shiner.
It was a golden shiner.
A depths golden shiner, which I think is a soft body bait. I'm not the most swim bait aficionado knowledgeable person, but I do know a lot of different swim baits. I'm pretty sure that one is a
Sakamata shad.
Sakamata shad in golden shiner color.
Yeah.
And so either way, he's throwing a big swim bait, and he was throwing a Zumo monster worm. Man, I'm gonna tell you, to go into a lake during turnover conditions and have the fortitude to throw a big swim bait and the ability to get enough bites a day on it, brother, that's pretty special. Like, that's real
It's
special.
like an oversized fluke.
Oh, really?
Yep. I've never seen one of those in my life.
How big is this thing? Oh, it's
8
huge.
inches. Yeah, it's 8 inches.
It's this big.
Yeah.
It's literally this big, but it is like a fluke. So he was throwing a giant jerk bait. Maybe we should have done a little research before we started this podcast. Probably would have been better.
Well, nonetheless, that's a big bait.
That is huge. That's even bigger than the big impact shads or the big zoom super flukes.
Mhm.
That's even bigger than that. Wow. Now that totally changes my whole mindset. I guess it wasn't one of those. This title is clickbait, just like the entire world was last week, folks. No big deal.
Look at
We'll keep going.
Who says we didn't have a plan?
But either way, throwing a big bait during turnover conditions, that's a tough situation, man, to be throwing a bait that big. It's kind of tough. I will tell you, when the turnover happens, you get a lot of these fish run to the bank and kind of scatter and disperse, and there's a lot of little bait fish, like big groups of big, small bait, which is what we've been dealing with on Fort. We'll talk about that here in a minute. And then if you get lucky, you'll find that isolated group, a gizzard shed or something like that. But to have the fortitude to commit to throwing big baits and believe that you're going to get enough bites during turnover conditions on big baits and then go forth and execute on it for a win, man, that was a really, you talk about swinging for the fences, a big roll of the dice. I mean, from a fisherman that fishes all the time perspective, for me as a fishing guide, I've got to put people on fish consistently to be successful.
Correct.
And to do that in those conditions, that is a big, big, big gamble, folks. I'm telling you.
Yeah, you don't just tie that bait on, pull up to a spot, throw your trolling motor down, and start flicking it out there. That's not what.
Man, that's living on a lot of faith and confidence in what you're seeing, what you think is happening,
Right.
and what you think you can execute on. Like, that was a big gamble by Mr. Matsushika. I
That's
murdered his name. man.
Masayuki Matsushita.
I was close. Matsushita. Man, that was a big gamble on his part. And hey, take a big gamble, get a big reward. And he did. He executed and got a big reward. So congratulations to him. I would not have picked those type of techniques to be what won Rayburn right now. Not even in it would have been the furthest thing that I would have thought. So
$50,000 payday.
$50,000 payday. More importantly than that, I believe that's going to get him
To the Classic.
To the Classic.
And he did say in an interview that he's always dreamed. He said they asked him what his biggest takeaway from this tournament was, and he says, and I quote, "I've always wanted to fish the Bassmaster Classic, and this tournament did that for me."
Yeah,
It's awesome.
that is awesome. Congratulations to him, man. That's
And since we're into giving people nicknames on this podcast, we're gonna call him Eminem from now on.
Eminem,
M squared.
Mitsubishi, or whatever it is.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, I like it.
congrats, Eminem. You did good.
Yeah,
You're right there with the Mathiele Daniels Jr.
that's right.
in our book. That
That's
was
right.
awesome, dude. that was awesome, man.
So you wanna preview for some sealing?
Preview for some Sealy. Let's answer a couple questions, and we'll do preview for some Sealy.
All right, because that'll kind of tie into our current conditions.
Yes, it will. Let's see where we were. How do we retrieve the HPH? So I actually have a glide bait. It's been a couple of years since I've done it. I have a in-depth glide bait video that I did on, and it gives full instructions on rod, reel, line setup, knot setup, tie, how I retrieve it, the areas I like to fish it in, all that stuff. But you know, a glide bait, since we got one sitting here, a glide bait's gonna just kind of do an S-curve swim like this. When you just slowly retrieve it or medium retrieve it, it's gonna S-curve swim like this. And these bass will get in behind this glide bait and follow it. And so what I like to do, my standard retrieve that I do most of the time is gonna be just a steady, man, I'm just gonna just keep that thing swimming real lazy and slow. Just slow as I can wind it and keep it doing this. And then every 7, 8, 10 cranks of the reel handle, I'm gonna go twitch, twitch. And that glide bait, what it's gonna do, it's gonna S-curve like this, and you're gonna twitch it twice, and it's gonna go. And that fish is behind it, and when it's behind it, the bait's moving forward, and then you hit it, and it goes this way, and then goes this way, and it stops, and that bass almost runs into it, and it forces that fish. Basically what happens is it forces that fish behind it into a decision. I either need to open my mouth and eat this bait because I'm about to crash into it, or I've got to tuck tail and run. The fish that tuck tails and run, he probably wasn't ever going to bite that bait. But the one that was going to bite it, when you put it in his face and he swims into it, he's going to open his mouth and inhale it. And it is, when they do that, they open their mouth and they knock slack in it and take off the other way like a rocket. And it is like, you better be holding your rod real tight. Because they knock the fire out of it when they hit that big bait. It's insane how intense they hit it.
The only bite I can kind of compare it to it is a Alabama reef bite.
Yeah. In fact, the very first fish, this has been many years ago, but the very first fish that I ever caught on a glide bait, this gentleman right here was in the boat with me when it happened, and it bit at the boat. I was playing around with that bait, trying to figure out how to work it, trying to look at it, how it did in the water, and I reeled it up, and right as it got to the boat, I hit that twitch, and that bait went choo choo, and I saw the fish come up and eat it, and I had so little line out, I never turned the reel handle. I didn't even set the hook, really.
No, you just
I just held on to my rod and just started fighting the fish like this and holding on to the rod. And I was like, Chris, get the net. And the fish made a hard run to the back of the boat. And I was like, never mind, because I was running out of line.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just pulled up as the fish was swimming. And I was pulling him up. And as he got to the surface, I pulled up and into the boat. The boat flipped him. And the funniest part about that was, and I know you remember this, I hit Chris right there with the shortest 5.5 pounder we've ever seen.
Yeah.
This fish was like not very long, but weighed like 5.5 pounds. Anyway, yeah, I hit Chris with this little solid meat, tightly packed butterball of a bass right in the nether regions as I boat flipped it, and literally put him down in the seat. Like he just sat down.
Because when you went to boat flipping, I sat back in the seat and then.
Yeah, it took him a minute. It took him a minute to recover from the old crotch shot.
Well, because not even just that. You don't want to go to hooping and hollering and dancing around with them dang treble hooks that were on that thing either.
Not in that region.
No.
Not in that region.
No. Now, one thing I will say about the glide bait too, when you're learning how to use this bait, do not get discouraged by
Mm.
seeing fish follow it to the boat and not connecting with them,
Right.
because you will see that a ton.
As a matter of fact,
More so times.
don't get discouraged. Like, look for that, because
Right.
one thing that I look for, and I don't throw these type of baits anymore. You know, a lot with customers and trying to be consistent, because man, you can have some days.
Right.
But one thing about a glide bait that I did always like was you can kind of tell within the first hour whether or not they'll bite that glide bait by whether or not you have followers.
Mhm.
If you're getting some followers, you will get some bites that day if you stick with it. If you throw that thing for like an hour and you don't have any followers, and you're probably not getting bit on the glide bait that day. You're
Right.
probably not. Maybe you need to change, different kind of
So-
swim bait or whatever. But that glide bait is probably not getting bit if you're not seeing followers within the first hour.
I always took it as, when I got them following it back to the boat, I'm doing something right to get them to follow it. Now I just got to figure out what I got to do as I'm doing the twitch, or even sometimes that giant rip, it'll make that thing just, and then pause, and it'll kick off to the side,
Yeah.
just like you're saying. Sometimes they'll knock at it that way.
Yep.
It's a lot of fun when you start getting bit on that thing.
We can sit here and talk about glide bait retrieves all day. I mean, I actually,
Right.
I'll use it like an underwater big giant Zara spook, where I'll throw it out there and I'll kind of hold my rod up and just twitch, and it'll just do this under the water, right on under the surface. Especially if I'm seeing those gizzard shad porpoise out of the surface a lot, I'll go to using that, man. And man, you'll be doing this, and it's like, doom, doom, oh god, like it's just crazy how hard they bite that thing.
I always have one on the deck in the fall. I'll put it that way.
All right, we got a few more people joining in now, making some comments. We got Michael King, we appreciate you joining us. Caesar Sotelo, what up? Best creek to throw a frog at Fork? Well, I'm not gonna just tell you one particular creek, because there's on Fork, there's a lot of fish scattered across the lake. So it's not one particular creek, but what I will tell you is you can go to the Fish Life app, Lake Fork Premium Package, subscribe, and you'll get a whole bunch of the best creeks to go fish on Lake Fork right now, because we just updated those spots. I'm actually going to do some more updates tonight when I get done with this, and you guys are going to have the best information possible for Lake Fork fishing on the Lake Fork Premium Package of the Fish Life app. And the life is spelled with a Y, L-Y-F-E,
Why is that, Bill?
because it's the best damn fishing app ever created.
Come on.
Trey Hunt asks, what would be your go-to color for largemouth non-Florida strain bass for frog color? I just, man, I don't think Florida strain or non-Florida strain is going to make a decision on my frog color. But I have three colors that I throw. I throw like a green color, like a green or a brown, just a natural color, and I'll throw a white and a black. Like, that's kind of the three frog colors that I need in my life at all times. And those three colors pretty much get you through any conditions. And after that, it's just up to the conditions of the day. It doesn't matter what kind of bass it is. It's the conditions of the day that dictate the color you throw. So speaking of that, let's go on and let's talk about Lake Fork a little bit. Cody Mays brings up something here. He says, I'd like to say one thing about the Sealy tournament. People, please be careful and have awareness. There's going to be so many people on the lake. You need to pay close attention. And he says he doesn't know how many times seen people this weekend pulling into the boat lanes and didn't even look and see if boats were coming and had to shut it down. Oh, as he was running down the boat lane, people idling across the boat lanes. Yeah. So when you're running down the boat lanes in the Sealy, if you're fishing in Sealy, it is going to be super crowded. You do need to have your head on a swivel. You don't know when somebody who's come down and fished this tournament, first time they've been to Lake Fork, doesn't understand the boat lanes, doesn't have any clue they're doing anything that might be dangerous or wrong in any kind of way, totally innocent, but they just don't know Lake Fork that well, and they're scared of the stumps. I get it. We're all running around these $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 bass boats. We don't want to tear them up. Lake full of trees. You don't know it. You're being careful. You definitely need to have your head on the swivel, and don't be so worried about pinning it back and running 75 your next spot. Take it a little bit easy in the Sealy tournament, guys. Watch out for your fellow man out there, your other boaters. It can get dangerous with that many boats on the lake if you're not careful.
Life jackets and kill switches, guys. Not just because it's a rule in the tournament.
It's a tournament rule, but yeah, you're gonna 100% gonna want to follow that, especially this weekend. But that's a pretty good tie into Lake Fork conditions, and we've kind of alluded to it already. But yeah, we've had some turnover conditions here too. I think we're pretty much done with the turnover. There's a little bit of remnants of it left on some areas of the main lake, but for the most part, the water looks good. The water clarity's pretty good. Not really dirty. Don't see a lot of debris floating. Every once in a while you'll see a little bit here and there. Like I said, just remnants of it left. No thermocline on the graph. Not seeing.
I cannot remember the last time it happened this early.
Yeah. Yeah, it's usually, and a lot of times it does happen like right around the Sealy, but it's like turn it over. Like it's already done for the most part now. So, and it is early this year, no doubt. And the water temp Friday morning was 80.7 degrees. So
what got up to maybe 82, 83 at the end of the day?
Yeah, and that was on the main lake. It was 80.7.
Right.
So it's a lot cooler than normal. And fish, we had some cooler weather and some cloudy weather at the end of the week, and the fish really turned on a bit. Now, the weather's not going to be all that cool, but the weather is going to be stable this week. So I don't think those fish that are pulled in are doing their thing. I really don't see anything drastically changing this week because the conditions are going to keep the water temps about where they are. Maybe a little bit of a drop, maybe a little bit. It's going to be pretty consistent, which, by the way, should lead up to the fish being really comfortable, really settled in, and biting pretty good for you guys this next weekend, hopefully. So what's happening is there is a ton of bait fish on the banks, scattered on the banks, some in pockets. But what I have found is that from about 1/3 to 2/3 back in the creek, so right in the middle of the major creek arms, seems to be where the biggest concentration of these bait fish are. They've already started to move in from the mouth a little bit, and they really haven't gotten all the way back yet. So they're kind of in the middle sections of these major creek arms.
Any day.
Now that being said, some of that area is a big area, and that's another reason that Fish Life app can help you, because we have isolated waypoints that show you where these bait fish have been lately. And everywhere that I'm finding an overwhelming amount of bait fish, I'm finding bass that are willing to bite. Chatterbait has come back into play at the end of last week. We really were catching them on a chatterbait really good. Little swim baits, little small swim baits are working well. Little small lipless crankbaits. The deal is these bait fish that are on the bank in such such plentiful numbers, these bait fish are small. They're small, and you can catch some really good bass. In fact, you guys will see on the video tomorrow. Cody Mays, who's commenting on here tonight, me and him went out, and we caught in about 2.5 to 3 hours of fishing time. We caught 3 perfect under the slot fish. I mean, perfect. Like they're gonna get a check for sure. We also caught one that was 23 inches. So in just a few hours, we had 3 checks of unders and one almost over
Same
the slot.
Ish.
Nothing. So good point. I'm not catching multiple fish on the same cast. You know what I'm saying?
Well, it's that time of year where
Like,
they're spread out.
in the same area, yeah, but it's a pretty big area. We're covering water in that area that we're seeing that bait. You're just not catching. It's not like you've got a wolf pack of 5 and you catch 3 of them right there down that little lane.
You're keeping your foot on the trolling motor and casting.
It's one of the only times a year that when I get a bite, I don't really stop and slow. I mean, I'll slow down, but I don't just stay there.
Right.
Like in the summer, once we get into the fall and they group up. In the winter, when I get a bite, I'm going to make multiple casts right there where I got that bite before I move on.
Right.
This time of year, not really. And I've tried it a little bit, but it just hasn't been working. So I'm pretty much, even when I get a bite, still moving along, nice and steady, covering that water. Now, once I've found that bait, wherever that big quantity of bait is, I'm going to fish around that for a long time. It take my time.
Find the bait, match the hatch.
Yeah, and if you can't get them to bite the moving baits, or if you get a bite or two on the moving bait, you might want to pick this up after. But a wacky worm, a weightless rig, clout stick bait, and a drop shot have also been some finesse techniques that we can get kind of some bonus bites out of. Or some bites. If they get into a lull where they're just not biting for a couple hours, we're picking up those finesse techniques to try and catch them. So that's the baits and kind of the sections of the lake that we're fishing. I wish I had more precise. I wish I could tell you, go to channel swings in the creeks or go to points or something. It's just not that exact. There are literally good fish, good wads of bait and good fish on do nothing stretches of bank. Like stretches of bank that I don't ever fish, ever. But I'm seeing birds, another thing, you can look for the herons, and even the white egrets will help you this time of year because they're all eating that massive quantity of little bait fish that are on the bank. But I'm just looking for signs of bait fish, looking for signs of life, and when I find that big quantity of bait fish, I'll fish anywhere. I mean, literally some banks that have no creek channel swings, no deep water close. Some of them have no grass, some of them have no wood. Like just do nothing banks can sometimes kick out fish.
Dude, some of the biggest fish I've ever caught were this time of year, and the cast I made, there's no reason for that fish to be there. Other
Yeah.
than there's bait pushed up on the bait.
That's absolutely a real factor of what's going on this week. So that all ties into a pretty good chance for everybody at the Sealy Outdoors this week to just kind of go fishing
Keep the lure in the water.
and catch fish. Like, some guys are going to struggle. I'm going to tell you, some guys are going to struggle. Obviously, that's the way every tournament goes ever. Like, some guys struggled on Rayburn this week, I can tell you.
Yeah.
But everybody's in the game this week because you can literally put the trolling motor down, especially if you put the odds in your favor, get kind of in the middle section of these major creek arms, put the trolling motor down, get the right bait in your hands and cover some water, you're probably going to catch some pretty good fish and have a really good chance to cash a check in this tournament. So,
I wish I was fishing with Sealy this weekend.
don't know why you're not. You probably should. You got like insider trader information.
Because I'm not very good.
Also a fair point. Also a fair point. What glide bait was that and what size? Was out last weekend on Fayette. Saw some really large shad. 10 to 14 inches. So this is about a 7 to 8 inch bait. This is the HPH gliding gizzard. This is
The goat.
old school, man. We've had this for a long time. This has been my backup one. I'm very careful about using this because bait's super expensive. This bait right here is $150 retail.
Tell them how long it took us to get those.
It took us, when we ordered them, the guy gets so backed up making them. When we ordered these, we got 4 of them. And this has been years ago that we got these, but it took us 11 months.
And believe me, there's still 4 total in both.
We haven't lost any of them.
I will go swimming for that.
This is the backup, and it's sitting right here without, we never even put hooks on it. So it's been here the whole time. So yeah, we ordered it. It took us 11 months to get them because it takes forever. You got to get on the list. And you just got to go to this Facebook page. Back then, I don't know how it is now because this has literally been years ago that we ordered these.
He's out of Georgia, correct?
He's in Georgia. His Facebook page used to be called Fish Atlanta Guide Service, and you just message him on there. You see PayPal the guy a crap load of money, and a year later you get a bait.
I mean, they were worth the wait, don't get me wrong.
Yeah, they're
But
awesome.
I'll still go swimming for it.
Cody Mays says come get in his boat and fish this weekend. That'd actually be a really good idea because Cody Mays has been like making all kinds of money on tournaments out there.
I'll holler.
Cody Mays, and I do the soccer coaching on the weekends, and I kind of take the weekends off. But this is great. Cody Mays, thank you for this. He says, over the weekend we started to see a lot bigger shad in the pockets, 3 to 4 inch size. Uh-oh. Hey, yo. Maybe that's why they started buying that chatterbait at the end of the week versus the smaller swim bait. So we start seeing those bigger shad in there. Those baits may change this week. And one thing you can do is be sure you check back in live Thursday night at 8:30. We'll do a live stream of my top 5 baits from this week. So that would get you guys, that's the night before the tournament started. That would get you guys the absolute most current information for the Sealy Outdoors tournament. Second day leader, 27-pound bag. What was he using? I don't know. We would have to research that. Chris, can you punch up the interwebs there a little bit and see what's going on? White buzzbait. Yeah, golly. Yeah, that's something I got to time. Somebody asked me last week, was it time for the buzzbait yet? And I said, no, not quite. But after what I saw at the end of the week, I kind of think maybe it is time to start throwing those white buzzbaits, especially a little bit smaller profile one. I really do need to start throwing white buzzbait. That's Big John's life. He's an East Texas guy. He fishes Lake of the Pines a lot. Thanks for that, Big John. We appreciate it. I definitely do need to consider. Yeah, he says it's time. Absolutely. It's time. And you know what? The fall can be a little bit like May, where I'm trying to tell you guys a few different baits that'll help you on Lake Fork. In May, it's impossible. Like, I could just name any bait in the boat pretty much in May, and we can catch fish on it. The fall gets like that, but within a category. So, in the fall, there's so many different baits that'll work effectively, as long as they look like a shad and the size of shad that you're around. So it could be a spinnerbait, it could be a chatterbait, it could be a swimbait, it could be a crankbait. Square bills are phenomenal. Lipless crankbaits, topwater walking baits, topwater poppers, buzz baits, like anything that can kind of somewhat mimic a bait fish running along as a moving bait. A swim jig can be great. They can all work. And what I would tell you to narrow it down and help you out is that you really need to look at the cover that you're fishing, in the area you're fishing, whatever cover is present, fish the baits that work efficiently in that situation. So if you're around grass, hey, a chatterbait's great, a swimbait's great, a buzzbait's great. That type of stuff's going to work really good. If you're around wood, you probably don't want to throw a chatterbait. You're going to want to throw a square bill. You're going to want to throw spinnerbait, something like that. Like, you're just fish what you can fish efficiently that looks like the size of shad you're seeing in that area based on the cover that's there. And all of it can work this time of year that looks like a shad.
I got it.
You got it. Let's go.
Daryl Gleason was throwing a 3/4 ounce jig.
Daryl caught the 27-pound bag.
Yeah,
surprise, surprise. So Daryl done found him some offshore fish, huh?
Yep, 3/4 ounce being in football jig and Gleason's candy.
Imagine that.
Wonder who
Yeah.
designed that color.
Yeah, right? Yeah, Daryl is a great guy. You know, probably arguably been, you know, it's always hard to say who's the best guide. Like, that's an impossible conversation. Daryl's definitely been one of the best guides on Toledo Bend for a lot of years now. Toledo Bend's right next door to Rayburn. He fishes Rayburn a lot, too. No surprise that he had the big bag, the 27-pound bag.
Yeah.
So. Got on a big jig bite. That's good. But that offshore stuff during turnovers, real hit or miss. And is what appears to have happened to Daryl is he missed on day 3.
He said, I've got a system and I'm running it. Once I catch a limit, you won't see me without a 3/4 ounce football jig in my hand the rest of the day.
So he was catching some numbers, catching some limits, and then going for it with that 3/4 ounce jig. And then, like can happen to any of us,
Yeah.
you know, the third day it didn't work out because that turnover this time of year, summer to fall transition, can be very, very hit or miss for anybody. For anybody. All right. Well, we've caught up on questions. We've covered our Sealy preview. We've covered our open review.
Mm-hmm.
Congrats to Eminem.
Eminem.
Not the rapper,
You my boy Blue.
but the basser.
The bastard.
Not the rapper, the bastard, Eminem.
Yeah.
So you know what time it is.
So I don't know if y'all know this, but I used to want to be a writer. And the only reason it never connected was because I couldn't write about bass fishing and be successful. But we found a way. We're going to do the Maxim edition of bass.
Yeah.
Bass body types, Maxim style.
Yeah, you know, like the deal is we all have our like body type preferences. Like some dudes like girls with a bigger back end.
Right,
Some dudes like girls with great personalities.
right.
You know what I mean?
Don't know.
Some like blonde hair, some like brown hair.
Right.
Some like blue eyes, some like green eyes. Well, we need you guys to interact with us in the comments because we're doing something like that, but we want to know what everybody's preferred bass fishing body type is.
And be specific.
You know what, Chris? We're going to have to do it too. So I'm going to actually, this is in your wheelhouse
Yeah, oh yeah.
because I know you're like demented as anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like your mind's as twisted as any person I know. So
Way to clean that up for the
Yeah.
people at home.
yeah, it's a family show, folks. We're walking a fine line on this topic here, and it's okay. We don't mind if we tiptoe over the other side a little bit. We'll figure it out.
Tiptoeing's fine.
Tiptoeing's fine. Chris, tell me what your preferred body type for bass
So,
is.
first of all, I want to start by saying I like the element of surprise. So, the size of the mouth can be smaller because you know sometimes whenever you make a long cast, you catch a fish and you see it shaking and trying.
You see their head, and you're like,
yeah,
oh.
you see their head and you're like,
Oh,
oh,
that's-
it's huge or whatever.
Or you're like, oh, that's just
Or
a
it's
normal
not that
fish.
big. Right,
And then it shows up in your boat, and what happens?
right, and you're like, wow,
There's a lot more there than I thought.
right.
Yeah.
And like that fish you brought up earlier,
It's like when the jeans are too tight, and then they come
Correct.
off, and then there's more there.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
Right. So, demonetized. Anyways, so just like that glide bait fish you were talking about,
Right.
it didn't have a great big.
No,
mouth.
it didn't.
It had about a 3-pound mouth.
It did.
Okay, and then the body, it looked like this thing. It looked like this bass and its sister.
It looked like it ate a bucket of
Right.
range balls at the driving range.
I think the same. It looked like this fish and her sister were hunting together, and she got too hungry and ate her sister.
Yeah.
She couldn't have been 18.5 inches, maybe.
Maybe.
And
5.5 pounds minimum.
so she was every bit as deep as she was long.
You like them as tall as they are long.
Yes.
That's a good measuring device. As tall as they are long. Now let me ask you this. So you like them, basically you like a largemouth bass that's built like a St. Clair smallmouth.
I want a 5x5.
Yeah, 5x5. Yeah. 5 foot tall by 5 foot wide.
That's right. That is my preferred. I mean,
that's his type.
That's my type.
Ladies, that's his type. So you like 5. Now let me ask you this. Because this is, I mean, probably the hottest topic of debate today is the tail.
Right.
Like, you got because you got some of these bass that come out that got that big old fat gut,
Right.
but they've eaten it all recently,
Right.
and it really hasn't dispersed throughout their body yet.
Right.
And so they'll have like a skinnier tail.
Right.
Like their tail doesn't match the rest of them.
Yeah, uh-huh.
So do you like your female bass to have a skinnier tail, or do you like the tail to be meaty and fat and thick too?
I want the tail to look like one of the windmill arms in West Texas. I want it to be wide,
You want to be wide,
super wide.
so you want to like have a hard time putting your hand around that tail.
I want the tail to be that tall.
But the head can be small.
But the head can be small.
The head can be small.
I mean, essentially, I want
Yeah.
Humpty Dumpty.
Yeah,
essentially.
so I mean, yeah, I like it. I think you've covered it pretty well. Is there anything else we need to talk about on yours? Girth? I mean,
Well,
width across the back?
So width across the back, if they're going to be this tall by this wide, or vice versa,
Yeah.
they're going to be
Like you
about-
need to have that back that you know how all these like KVD likes to put the eagle claw on them. Like you want the ones that you can't, even a 3-pounder, you can't really get your hands on them good.
If I can't get middle finger and thumb inside the gill plates from the
Yeah.
top, that's what I like.
That's what you're looking for.
Yeah.
It's pretty
I
good.
want to have to grab it up under the gut.
That's hard. You got to cut.
Two hands.
Just hug it a little bit.
And then whenever I bring it in, I
Hug
don't
it.
care if these treble hooks are sticking out. I'm hugging it.
And then you like to take your hand and just kind of
Right.
pet that big round
That's right.
belly at the bottom.
That's right.
That's pretty
just
good.
Look her dead in the eye and ask her, "Who hurt you? Why did you eat this bait?" Yeah.
We might be going a little too far on this topic here. I don't know. But we're going. It's full send at this point.
Yeah.
There's no turning back.
Like she ran away from home and she wants to stick it to the man, so she bit one of these.
I guess it's my turn now, and I think we've described your fish in pretty good detail. Oh, coloring. Do you have a color preference?
I like dark fish.
Like dark. Oh, I'm trying to hold this together. Yeah, I hear you there. All right, you know what? Dang it, I'm going. I gotta take over because I can't take any more of this. I'm about to dial up. So I don't even want to read the comments. I'm scared to read the comments right now.
Go ahead. Let's see.
Big John. Big John says he likes the whale tail.
Yes. That's good. That's good. Who's that, Big John?
Big John.
Man, if I had a
My man
Facebook,
from Lake of the Pines.
I would tell you to send me a friend request.
Oh, Big John says he wish they all looked like it's late February. That's a good point. Gary Payne says big mouth, huge body, wide tail. Can't disagree with that.
No, that's a good.
Big mouth diving south, says Caesar.
Come on.
That's good. Southeast Boston said you boys walking a line that's getting thinner and thinner. For sure. For sure. Then we got bug-eyed and bucket mouth. That's good.
That's a good.
All right. So that's kind of the comments we've had so far.
Those are like bumper stickers. That's what we should have done.
Yeah.
Bumper
He likes
stickers.
the whale tail. That's a great bumper sticker.
I'm sorry.
All right, my turn.
Come on.
My turn.
Go
I'm
on.
going to go a little different direction. To me, probably the most important body feature in a bass is a big, giant head. Couple different reasons. First is a big, giant head is a big, giant mouth, which means she can eat any bait, no matter what I throw. I like to throw big power fishing baits.
Right.
And I need a fish that can handle whatever I want to throw at it.
Mhm.
Like I want it to eat that C25 and put the whole thing in there. I don't want her to put just the tip of the C25 in there. I want her to put the whole C25 in there. Okay? But the big head is also a very important feature to me because the head on a fish, especially on a bass, has more bone than anywhere else. And at the end of the day, we're all trying to catch the heaviest bass we can catch, right? Well, that big head is going to have more weight than any other part of that fish's body. So even though those fish you're talking about are beautiful, they're beautiful, man. They very beautiful, fun to look at. Little bitty head, big wide belly, big thick all the way through, thick down the tail. Like they're beautiful, they're great to look at. But there's a little bit more function in having that big head as a bass fisherman because you get more weight, right? So I really like a fish that has a big head, and then also I want it to have a big frame. I want it to have like not just this part of the tail, but like the actual fin. I love that big wide tail because that tells me they carry that bone structure. They've got that big frame all the way through the body, and that's what's really going to not only provide more weight but provide more potential for weight. That big frame is so important to have the potential for that fish to grow into the fish of a lifetime or the fish you want for your lifetime. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like the fish you want to keep your whole lifetime. Mm-hmm. You got to have that potential to get real big if you want to keep it around for a long time.
See, I can't help but every time I catch a fish like the one I was describing,
yeah,
I always look at those and go, and I'm sure it's a cliche, stupid joke, but future Sherlooker right here. I'll go to future Sherlooker. Yeah. So the bass that I'm talking about, at some point when you were talking about looked like this one. You got to think. Could have.
I mean, obviously small fish that are super thick. Well, it's not small, but smaller than the giant fish, like the fish you're talking about, 18-inch fish that's super filled out. That fish does have potential to grow because I think the number one reason it has potential to grow is because it weighs so much for its frame, and on top of that, it's eating in a manner and feeding efficiently enough at the top of the game where that's going to provide it the ability to really grow. Because at the end of the day, all these fish can grow big, but not if they don't eat right. And the ones that are stuffing themselves and gorging themselves and getting that fat that early in their life, yes, they have the potential to grow really fast. Absolutely. And then the eyes, man. To me, the eyes.
Big bug eyes.
The eyes are so important on a bass. As far as just pure, raw attractiveness of a bass, the eyes are so important. If you don't see a little bit of a white ring around those eyes, I don't want it. You know what I mean?
Raccoon bass.
And the deal with the whites around the eyes, and this is, I know we're kind of goofing around, but this is actually true, what I'm about to say. Bass's eyes are like humans' ears and nose. They never stop growing. So when you see, like, you don't always have to have the biggest bass. You can find a 7-pounder that's got those white rings around big bug eyes. The deal is, it's just an old fish. Right. So as those fish get older, their eyes never stop growing. They start getting out of their head a little bit, and you start seeing the whites around their eyes. So when I see a bass and I catch one that has whites around the eye, the white ring around the eyes, bug eyes, as it's often called, I feel like I've done something.
Right.
I caught a fish that's survived.
Bird.
Like I've caught the apex of the apex. A bass is an apex predator in freshwater, and I caught one of the most successful ones because it's old. So seeing that white around the eyes is always a big deal. I love that big head and those big wide eyes and that big frame, man, that big frame. They can be a little bit thinned out. That's fine. I don't mind. They be on Jenny Craig a little bit. I just needed to have like just a big head and big frame.
I've caught some 5-pounders back in the day that just were a poor frame, but they had these great big old beady eyes, and
they're just old.
They're just old fish.
They're just old. Yeah, I don't really like them the only problem with that is like there's a fine, like we're walking a fine line, there's a fine line with that body type I'm describing, because as they get older and get that big frame on them, then they reach a point where they kind of hit the decline, and once they're past their prime, I really don't have any use for female bass.
Right. From which dog?
Did I take it back to the line pretty well there?
Always back to the line.
Got to go right back to the edge of the line.
Long jump.
We all going to hell and you two are leading the way. Most likely.
Hey, would you like to have a good time?
Yeah. Well, let us know if you enjoyed that segment there.
Change.
Hey, I'll tell you what, even better than that, comment your favorite bass body type. I think we did a pretty good job. Yours was way more fun than mine, though.
You know,
Chris is down with the thickness, is what he said.
I heard that.
Mm-hmm. Best one yet, Big John's Life. It's the best segment we've ever done.
All right.
Woo! We went from 800,000 to 750,000 for a podcast tonight, boys.
Let's go.
Let's go. Move in the right direction.
Man.
Todd, who's actually a legit bus driver.
Yeah.
Like, he drives buses.
Yeah.
He actually drives the Whiskey Myers tour bus when they get to tour ever again. Maybe, who knows at this point.
Someday.
But he said that we're going to hell, or everybody's going to hell, we're leading the way, but he's driving the bus.
Oh, so he's driving the bus.
That means we're just back there partying with your little short fat bass and my big long bass.
Come on.
I'm in. I'm in, Todd. How many of those right female bass can we fit on this tour bus you're talking about?
9 in the wall.
Like, is there a big tank in the back where we can put them all in? Can you add a big fish tank for us to put all of our favorite female bass body types in that tank to tour with us? That'd be great. That'd be great. Awesome, man. Well, hey, man, thank you guys for joining us tonight. Chris, we've had a lot of fun.
It has been.
This has been a fun one. It hasn't been our longest podcast ever, but it has been a fun podcast. I enjoyed that segment. I think we should try and do something like this every week on the podcast.
Absolutely. We'll call it the tiptoe segment.
The tiptoe.
Come.
Toe the line. We'll figure out a name before next week.
The Johnny Cash segment.
You got
We're gonna
walk the line.
Come on.
Nailed it. All right, man. If you guys have fun listening to this podcast, please drop a comment. Let us know. Let us know if we need to put these goofy segments in at the end, because this sure is fun doing them on this end. So, other than that, I don't really know what else to say. I think we pretty much said all we need to say, or all we probably are allowed to say. I might even be kicked off YouTube at this point. I'm not really sure.
Demonetized.
But Chris, do that thing you do.
Short and Fat Bass 2020.